methodology, that is sampling. So the reason why I picked up sampling was like, see, we at Chitkara University, we have more than 250 scholars, research scholars, and simultaneously the vivas are going on, right? So when the viva is there, in the final viva, the maximum questioning or maximum defense that a candidate has to go for is the chapter 3, which includes your pre-testing, pilot testing, how you arrived at the sample, and what other sampling techniques did you take, whether your sample is representative of the entire population or not. So all these questions, as a research scholar, they are very important to the researchers, faculty members also, and those who are the supervisors also, right? Because see, sampling is the core of a thesis, and if we see the research papers, I'll show you a number of research papers where even the reviewers nowadays, uh, they also tend to see how you arrived at a sample, right? What are the various techniques did you adopt to arrive at a sample of, let's say, 400, 500, 600, 700, and many more, right? And samples, they generally we use all of us use samples, right? We read a newspaper article and the reporter says that he or she talked to a group of employees, right? So advertisements inform us that in tests, 8 out of 10 owners said that pet preferred a particular brand of pet food, right? Then television programs also offer us top 100 best pop songs or top 100 most scary cinema film moments. So implicit in these examples is the understanding that it is possible to ask, is it possible to ask every person? No, they just take the sample. They just, you know, pick up a few people, and they're on the basis of their opinions, they frame the results, right? So sampling is very important part of thesis as well as the papers. Uh, I being a reviewer to various, journals. So what happens is, like when we just start with the introduction, we see the introduction, then we go for theoretical basis there or not, and afterwards we simply go for the methodology, right? The output or the data analysis, when we as Indians see ki, like for in data analysis may we need to have xyz number of tools, but it's not required. Nowadays the reviewer trend has been modified, and the trend is that nowadays, till methodology, I have number of papers, and never ever in my paper the thing came ki, okay, data analysis is not accurate, right? Because then the output is generated by the your software. The reviewer comments generally come when we are on the methodology section, introduction section, or theoretical background section, right? So sampling as a part of methodology is a very important part, and it has to be clear, right? You need to clear your concepts of sampling. So that is why that motivated me to take a class on, rather than telling the research process and all that. Why not to handle on the sampling alone, right? Because recently a case happened when a girl who was doing in, let's say, something in Manipal Institute of Medical Sciences, she came to me, how should I collect the sample, because I have to take the thumb impressions of the patients, right? So how, if it's an experimental study, so how to justify that sample, right? So sampling as such is something which everybody is facing the problem. So in this session, maybe this is this is 2 day session. One day I'll take sampling. I'll try to complete non-probability and probability, and let's see if I'm able to complete non-probability, then probability and sampling errors and how to calculate sample I'll take tomorrow. So is that okay for you? Yes, participants, is that okay? Is that comfortable? You can mute yourself, and you can ask me the questions, no issues. Yeah, in case there is any problem, just unmute yourself and ask questions. I'll respond in between, right? Now these are the learning outcomes. And now what is research? Research, it is a systematic, yes, we know it's a systematic process. It starts from problem identification, goes till your report generation. It is controlled because it is carried out by you people under certain controlled conditions. Let's say your area is controlled, your experiment is controlled, it's empirical, right? And it is the critical investigation of natural phenomena guided by the theory and hypothesis. Now, what is theory? Theory is a set of interwoven ideas, right? It's not always important that we should have theory in our research, but yes, when it comes to management or when it comes to your social sciences research, theory has to be taken, right? And theoretical background, theoretical underpinning is a very important part. And from those theory, you derive the hypothesis, and then you proceed ahead, right? So I know you all are familiar with the what is the difference between the conceptual and theoretical framework. I'll go back to the screen. Yes. So uh, yes, I request IoT admin to please allow the people to interact, because whenever they have questions, let them ask the questions. No issues at all,
No,
right?
one second, unmute and speak, ma'am. I have enabled.
Yes. Yes, yes. So, yes. Do you know what is the difference between the theoretical and practical, theoretical and conceptual framework? Anyone? Or shall I explain? Yes. So please tell if you see. Okay, I assume that again, uh, you're not familiar what is the difference between the theoretical and conceptual framework. Fine. So no issues. See, theoretical framework is, let's say, you pick up the theory. Let's say if somebody's from the management field, you must be familiar with the motivation theory, right? So that motivation theory has five or six constructs, right? Right. When you pick up this theory as such, that is your theoretical framework, and you apply that motivation theory for the purchase of a product, or let's say purchase of the fire alarm, right? So that is your theoretical framework. But again, conceptual framework is, when you modify that existing, framework which is available, right? See, I'll give you a very simple example. Suppose your mother has a recipe of making a tea, right? So she has a specific recipe tea, right? She puts some sugar first, then boils the water, then puts some, let's say, some, black pepper, or let's say basil leaves or some herbs in that, right? And then milk in that. So that is the recipe of your mother. That is your theoretical framework, right? But when you make a tea, you pick up that recipe, but you remove basil and you add some cardamom or black, elaichi or something like that. So that becomes your conceptual framework. Means you have taken the theoretical theory of somebody else and modified it as per your own requirement, right? So that is the difference between the theoretical and conceptual framework, which is very important part in our management research. Yeah. So these are the important components of the empirical research, as you all know. Let's say we start with the problem statement, research questions, purposes, benefits, theory, assumptions. Then we have variables and hypotheses. And when it comes to research design and methodology, then instrumentation is when we prepare the questionnaire, and then comes your sampling part. So what is a sample? A sample is a smaller, or what we say, representative collection of units from a population used to determine the truths about that population, right? A smaller means, it's, let's say, take the example of random tasting of sweets. You have, you go to a sweet shop, and then you pick up one piece. So that is randomly you are tasting a sweet, right? It is a small, and that sweet ka, let's say piece which you picked up, that is representing the entire population of that particular sweet, in on that particular table, right? So it is used to determine the truths about that population. Obviously, when you are picking up the sweet, or randomly you're picking up, that a sweet, eating that, then that determines you, okay, the taste is good, whether your kids will eat it, or you will eat, or your family members would like to eat. So sampling is done to estimate an unknown characteristic of a population, right? So if the sample shares similar characteristics, even a sample will give close to accurate results, because picking up the sample is very important, right? So if the sample is sharing, let's say the sweet which you have picked up, that is, that has got excellent flavor, then it's giving you the accurate results, right? Now, why we go for sampling? And number of reasons. First of all, we have limited resources, right? We have, it is not possible, or it is not practical for us to, survey the entire population. Then your budget, right? Your budget constraints prevent you from surveying the entire population. Your time constraints, because then if suppose if you have to take the sample from entire India, so that is going to take so much time, and your PhD is of 3 years, right? Only 1 year you can give to your sample collection. So again, budget, time, and it is impracticable to survey the entire population. And moreover, you if you, again you are, you have collected the data. Let's say I am working with farmers, right? I've collected the data of all the farmers of the North India. But what if I have, let's say, 5,000 farmers, then tabulating and with that typing and putting the data in the Excel sheets, that is going to require time, right? So what I'll do, I'll go for the sampling. I'll just pick up, see the overview of that 5,000 forms and see which are complete. Then I'll take a sample of that, right? So that means if I have collected all the data, but I need the results quickly, I need the results fast, then even then I go for sampling, right? So the sampling frame is an important part. It is a list of sample units from which the respondents are drawn. With this, I'll discuss in detail in my subsequent slides. Let's say if somebody is saying the lights are not working, did you check them all? And another person saying, no, but I checked a random sample. Randomly, I picked up few lights. That should have been the representative of the entire population, right? So this is how we pick up the sample. So let's say this is the population or experiment, and you pick up a sample, and that sample, the reverse arrow which is there, that sample is going to draw the inference, right? What this population says about what this population is about, right? Yes. So again, I go back to you people. And any questions? Any questions? Yes. Shrivasan is raising a hand. Yes, Shrivasan ji, any question you want to ask?
Ma'am, that might be by mistake also, ma'am. You can
Sorry.
continue, ma'am. That might
Okay,
be by mistake also. You can continue.
okay, right, right, right. Yeah. Now, the three factors which influence sample representativeness. First of all, now what do we mean by sample representativeness? Sample representativeness means that sample is showing the characteristics of entire population. So that is the sample representativeness. Then there are three factors which influence sample representativeness. First is the sampling technique, right? Which technique you are using. Nowadays the journals, they need justification, which technique you are using and why you have picked up this technique, right? Then sample size, because if the size is small, then obviously the sample is not representative of the entire population. So sample size plays a very important role. Even if we go for certain softwares, that softwares don't run on small sample size. If it is covariance based structure equation modeling, then it requires a minimum sample of 200. Otherwise we have to go for partial least square method of this PLSM. So that is why sample size is very 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 important, and participation, that who is the participant, right? Let's say I'll give you a very simple example. Let's say you're doing a survey on, let's say, online shopping, right? And you have got a questionnaire of 50 items. Now those 50 items are there, and then what you're doing is, excuse me, can you please mute? Yeah. So like, let's say, you go to your colleagues and ask them to fill up the questionnaire, right? So they filled up, but they were just going through the questionnaire, and they filled up. Then let's say you wanted a sample of 500, but for in the first only 300 people filled up. So what you did, you followed up with them through emails, through personal visits. Please fill up the form, please fill up the form, please fill up the form, like this is way you were asking them. So what happened, they, without reading even the questions, people started filling up the forms, and that part will create the bias, or the non-response bias, which we call, right? They're not responding while reading. So there are ways to tackle the or identify the non-response bias. That is not beyond the scope of this workshop. But yes, participation or active participation, that plays a very important role in case you want to go for the sample representativeness. And important is, when might you sample the entire population? First of all, when your population is small. First, when your population is small, then when you have extensive resources, or when you don't expect a very high response. When you don't expect a very high response in medical, am I audible?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, okay. Actually, somebody just closed the light. Okay. So I'll go back. I thought I lost my connection. So we like yes, we sample the entire population when the population is very small. Let's say you want to conduct a survey on the what we call the people with autism, right? So that time, nowadays you won't find much people or kids with autism. So here again, what you will do is, the sample will be small. When you have extensive resources, and when you don't expect a very high response, let's say you're doing a research on some, so you're doing a research on people who have got your thumb expressions, or who come there for the treatment, and what is the pre and post intervention after giving a particular treatment. Let's say nowadays a lot of research is going on the infertility clinics, right? IVF. So what you do is, you just prepare an intervention of meditation and yoga, and you provide that intervention. You have two groups: experimental group and non-experimental group, right? Control group. In one group you give the intervention, and in another group you don't give the intervention, right? So here, when you don't give the intervention, there also uh, you know uh, this thing when you don't give the intervention, so you have a control on them, and you compare the responses. So in that case also, we don't expect a very high response, right? Suppose in medical studies especially, we take the census, right? Let's say somebody is coming to your clinic, if you are a medical practitioner, and he or she, and you want to survey that how many people uh, came here for from past 3 months. And then what was the I prescribed certain treatment to those people, and then after 3 months you want to note down their responses. So that way you can take the census means entire population into account. So mostly the sampling of the entire population is generally done in the your medical studies, right? Where patients are limited, diseases are limited. Let's say, one of the student over in our university, he was doing on the MRI machines, right? What is the anxiety level of the people who are going for MRIs, right? And how many people have anxiety? So again, from and how to combat that anxiety. So again, the sample was he took the census, right? So important here is what is your population of interest? Is it going smooth? Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am. No issues, ma'am.
Yes.
You can carry on. If there is any interruption, I'll let you know, ma'am.
Yeah. Okay. So, what is your population of interest, first of all, to whom you want to generalize your results? Let's say your population could be doctors, all students, school children, Indians, women aged 15 to 45, other. Or my question is, can you sample the entire population? It's difficult, right? It's not possible. It's possible, but it's difficult. Moreover, it depends upon the type of the study, right? Let's say, suppose you are giving certain hormonal uh, interventions to let's say the fishes, right? So and seeing their results, then you can have, let's say, 20-30 fishes, and then you can give the hormone injections, and then you see what is the result. So that is here you are sampling the entire population. Now this is considerations while or steps in sample design. Again, a very first of all, you need to understand what is the objective and magnitude of the seriousness of the research, right? First of all, it is reliability. That means how much error can you afford and what is expected of the data. Let's say, for example, survey on the car color preferences, right? Here you can have certain error, right? What are the preferences? Because even at times there are people who are color blind also. But survey on the health precautions at the time of COVID, that tells about the, here you can't expect, you can't afford much error, right? Or a survey on the impact of a drug in medical or science related studies. There you have to take the 99% confidence level or interval. That means chances of error, they need to be low or less, right? And population is from whom the data will be collected, right? Who would be your query target? First of all, uh, like from who would be the query target, or who would be the persons who will be responding to you? Let's say, again, if you want to analyze the per capita income of a certain state, then the state residents would be your respondents, right? And if you want to analyze the per capita income of a country, then countries would be, your respondents, right? Preference towards online tools, right? Let's say, online tools, what is this e-learning and all that tools, right? And use preference towards online learning tools. See difference. Preference towards online learning tools, it's very generalized. You can survey anybody, right? You can survey the kids, you can survey the younger generation, you can survey the elderly also, you can survey even the trainers also, those who are doing the trainings and all that. But then when it comes to youth preference towards online learning tools, in that case, your target would be young people, right? Then impact of social media, voting pattern, etc. And what disciplines are students choosing for graduation versus graduation discipline pattern in past 10 years. See the difference, right? In first case, what discipline are the students choosing for graduation, right? So here you will target the colleges, and you will see what discipline they are selecting, right, for the graduation. Let's say people are preferring commerce, science, arts. You can have a survey. And graduation discipline pattern in the past 10 years, you are restricting yourself to 10 years, right? So here again, the students who passed out, who were graduated from the past 10 years, that could be your population. Are you getting it? Is that clear? Yes. Is that clear? Shall I proceed?
Ye-
Population is clear?
yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Now, population, that means from whom the data will be collected, because these are very, simple concepts, but they're very tricky also. At times people fumble. What was your population at the time of the defense? We are unable to, find, people are not aware of the population. So that is why I'm giving, in detail, right? Now, after population, it comes your sample frame. That is a list of sampling units from where sample has to be drawn, right? Sampling frame is in case of, is same in case of finite population, while it is a part of infinite population. Now, sampling frame is the list, right? The list from where your sample has to be drawn. I'll give further examples which will help you to clear. Now, a sample unit is, it's a singular value within a simple database. Let's physical unit from which data has to be collected. Let's say, for example, in a study on the faculty of universities, every faculty is a sample unit, right? In a study of IT firms in Delhi NCR. Now, this IT firms in Delhi NCR is your sampling frame, and one firm becomes a sample unit. Or in a, survey on the household incomes in a city, so every household becomes a sample unit. So size of the sample, it depends upon the size of the population, right? If variation is more, you can go for more sample size. Ideally, in our management and these type of studies, the studies which related to, social sciences, we go for more sample size as compared to the studies which are related to the health sciences, or the studies which are related to the, let's say, agriculture, or studies which are related to, let's say, now suppose you want to test the, the people with myopia, or giving certain intervention to myopic patients, or people with have some opto problems, so that way the sample reduces, right? So sample, population, sample frame, and sample unit, they are very important parts, right? Again, when we go for the data collection, then there are, two types of errors which generally come. First, we have to tackle the non-respondents, right? Now, non-respondents are of two types. The people who don't respond in the study, it's okay. It do not hurt the results. It won't, modify. It won't alter the results. It won't change my
Good evening,
results.
ma'am.
But then again, yeah,
Excuse me, ma'am. Ma'am, your presentation is not visible, ma'am.
is it visible now?
Yes, ma'am. Now it is visible, ma'am.
Okay. And if I go the slideshow from current slide, is it not visible now?
Yes, ma'am. It is visible, ma'am. It is visible.
है ना?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes,
You
yes.
can continue.
Now again, yeah, yeah. So non-respondents, they are a partial, right? Sometimes who just see, suppose, let's say, this is a group of, let's say, 25 people. So out of 25, I gave my questionnaire. So out of 25, 10 filled up immediately. Okay, ma'am, will fill up. And for 15, I had to chase, and what happened, there were few questions which were double barreled, or there were few questions which were, not easy to understand. So they just, picked up 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, making the patterns, right? So this is the, these are the people, partial, non-respondents, they will hurt my results, right? Those who have not answered and those who have answered incorrectly, my results will change. So it's always better, we should have the simple questions. Or I have already given my sessions on the questionnaire design earlier also. You can, so this is questions should be simple, easy to understand without any charges, right? Next is the pilot survey. Again, pilot survey, I hope you all understand, it's a short survey which we conduct. And for pilot survey we go for convenience sampling. So we use the instrument in a controlled environment, right? So these are the steps which we need to consider in our sample design. First is we need to study the objective, seriousness of the research, population, sample frame, sample unit, and what is the size of the sample which we need to go for. So again, let's study population a bit. It's the entire group that a researcher wants to draw conclusions about: people, sales, territories, states, organizations, etc. Right? Let's say population has to be defined very clearly or very carefully so that the researcher can reach out to the correct source of information. For example, survey on the industrial buying behavior may be conducted with the purchase department people, but again, engineers also have some influence on the purchase department decision. Now, on the basis of what you are studying, answer the question whom you want to talk to, people's motivation during the again your population, right? So population, it could be finite as well as it could be infinite. So when it is possible to count and name each and every member of the population, it becomes finite. Let's say students of your class, let's say right, population of your locality, city, or even country. That is a finite. And when we are unable to count the numbers, let's say the people using online shopping, right? So that population becomes infinite. At times there are, again, we have the theoretical population as well as we have got the accessible population. So target population is something which refers to the entire group of individuals, right? So target population, it has got certain characteristics. It is also known as theoretical population. Target population, it refers to the entire group of individuals where researchers are interested, right? So very important. Again, it's very important. Who is your target population? What type of research you are studying, right? What type of the research you are doing? So it has again number of characteristics, and this is known as theoretical population. And let's say now, I'll give you a very simple example. Let's say you wish to generalize to urban homeless males, right? You want to find, uh, like, or you want to, get 30 to 50 in India. Now, if that is the population of interest, then you are really going to have a very hard time developing a reasonable sampling plan. And again, you're not going to find any accurate list. So that is what here it is, population is infinite. And even if you did, by chance you got some, population from the census or something, you would almost certainly not be able to, visit that hundreds of urban areas and find the sample, right? So we probably should make a distinction between the population that you would like to generalize to. Now, we will call the former as a theoretical population, and accessible population is, let us say, accessible. If suppose you restrict your sample, right? The accessible population might be homeless males between the ages of 30 to 50 in 6 selected urban areas across India. Now, what you were doing is previously 30 to 50 in India, and now you are restricting yourself to 30 to 50 in 6 selected urban areas across India. So this is what is your accessible population. Now it is easy for you to move around, right? Because you need to select the district or 6 urban areas as per the feasibility, and this is your accessible population. Going into bit detail into sampling frame. So the listing of the accessible population from which you will draw your sampling is the sampling frame. Let's say if you are doing a phone survey, then telephone directory is your sampling frame. limited resources and accessibility, they prohibit researchers from collecting data from all the target population. So as a result of which, sampling frame plays a very important role. So theoretically, again, for example, the population, again, for a sampling frame, you can see the example: population is all the people in your state who own the cows, right? That is your population. But your sampling frame could be, may include farmers, right? Let's say again, another example is population is all the people using mobile healthcare applications. But again, the sampling frame could be healthcare practitioners, all the elderly using those applications. Means it is a list. It is a list, or it's a accessible population from where you'll draw your sample. And again, it depends upon the objectives, right? So population is broad, and then sampling frame is a bit narrower side. So if the population is small, then sampling frame might be equal to the population. As I already said, in health studies related to healthcare, when you are, using, or you are just, trying to validate the impact of a drug on the patient, or you are, searching for the people who have got, cancer, or what are their customer satisfaction with respect to the operation theaters, right? So there, again, the sampling frame may be equal to the population, but mostly population is not small. So sample frame becomes a part of the population. This diagram will help you to clear. That means, again, what you want to generalize. So what you want to generalize is your theoretical population. Then you have access to certain limited people, right? That is your study population or accessible population. How you get access to them? Through sampling frame, and who is in your study is the sample. So this is the sampling breakdown. Again, a very simple: study population, target population, then study population, and then from study population or accessible population, you reach the your sample. So any questions still here? Yes, any questions? Anything you want to ask? Shall I proceed ahead? Shall I proceed? Is it clear everything which I have told you, or you want me to explain if some other some concept if you want me to repeat? Okay. So I didn't get any response. So let's move ahead now. So while discussing about the samples, again, we need to take care of so many things. First of all, it's a difficult multi-step process, and there are a lot of places where we can go wrong, right? Sampling is a difficult process, and once we have got the wrong sample, our entire results are wrong, right? So in our PhD or in a thesis, especially when you are a research scholar, or when you are doing a research for some project, sample is something which gets the maximum significance, right? Your questionnaire and sample. Wrong questionnaire will give you wrong results, and wrong sample will again give you your wrong results, right? So as we move from each step to next in identifying a sample, there is a possibility of introducing a systematic error. Now, what is systematic error? Let's say, I gave you a questionnaire, right? So let's say this is a group of, again, I should say 25 people. I gave you a questionnaire to fill up that form. And of them, 10 people filled up very clearly, right? They were able to understand the language. Another 15, group of people, they were not able to fill that questionnaire, right? They just got confused in between, or some wording was not clear, or let's say, they were double barreled questions. So that is, here it led to the systematic error, right? Again, if you are able to identify the population of interest, let's say, I wanted to do a research on mobile healthcare applications, and my population of interest is the elderly using the healthcare apps, but I may not be having the access to all, right? So that will lead to your bias, or that will lead to an error. Again, how much error is required, that we will see next. So you may not draw the sample correctly, and even if you do, they may not come and they may not stay, right? So this is a very difficult business indeed to get sample from the right persons. But again, there are certain strategies which we follow, right? When we go for the questionnaire testing from the sample or identify the sample, we take the informed consent, right? We always request them, okay, your data will be shall be used for the academic purpose only, and your data will not be used, we will not share your data, we will not share your personal details. This is the informed consent which we always write our questions. So the process as such is very simple. First of all, you define the population, then you measure the sampling frame, and you identify the method, sample size, and go for the data collection. These are the different types of sample techniques which we need to take up, right? So first is the probability or random sampling technique, and second is the non probability sampling, where every unit does not stand equal probability of getting selected, right? So probability sampling, or we always call it the random sampling, that means everybody has a chance. No one can claim that they will be chosen for sure or left for sure. So here, when we use random sampling, that means when we have a list, right? Otherwise, we always go for non-probability sampling because we don't have that list. I'll share few research papers which I think might be of interest to you. Just a moment, I'll just share that. Is the paper visible? Is this paper visible?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. So see, important is data collection and data method, right? So this is a study of China, where they said we did a pilot study. Then we invited 30 users to use this pre-test the questionnaire by correcting furthermore to ensure high quality, reliable online survey. Blah 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 was there. The lot of processes were there. Again, see, this study used the convenience sampling method recommended by the past technology adoption studies, right? So there are different ways to this thing because why they use the convenience sampling, because here again the data was not available. Even if we go to this paper, see, section is very important, right? Your reviewer, if you are into the writing the research papers, your reviewer will read only this much output. He knows that has been generated by the software, that will be anyways however it will be correct, right? So adequate sample size plays a role in structure equation modeling. Siddiqui recommends a sample size of 384, 90 items. Again, both we are just targeting this, right? Both convenience and snowball sampling methods were used to contact the respondents. Why? Because non-probability sampling technique were preferred in the study, as the sampling method is suitable for research in light of India's typical social and cultural context. We are Indians, right? If you are my friend, definitely you will fill out the form. You'll go to 10 other people. Please fill up the form. ये मेरे friend का है. This form belongs to my friend. This belongs to my close friend, relative, right? And if I don't know you, I will never fill up your form, right? So this is what we are, right? I am also like this. You are also like this. So in India, personal relationships are preferred to the professional relationships. Furthermore, non-probability sampling techniques have been adequately applied in the previous studies. So this is how we justify if we have taken the non-probability sampling, and that too, the previous studies also speak. Dubey ki study bolti hai, Krishnan ki study bolti hai. These studies also speak, right? So if I go to this paper, yes, kuch important. Okay. If I go to this research paper, so here also, just a moment, here also, see, the proper sample size selection is very important. So this is, we used non-probability sampling approach because this method is again the same thing. In India, personal relations are preferred over the professional ones. Further, non-probability sampling techniques have been adequately applied. The same thing is there, in most of the research papers. We generally, we go for non-probability sampling because Indian scenario is like this only, right? So we say, random sampling, but again, random sampling is very difficult, right? Here we use the sample size criteria 10:1, right? So contacting respondents through multiple sources reduces the occurrence of biases. So here, this is how we, you know increase the response rate also, as well as we go for non-probability sampling techniques also. These are very much used in our Indian studies, right? In our studies, especially when the sample size is large, and when we go for this thing, when we go for social sciences type of research. In science, we go for simple random or systematic, which I will take tomorrow. Today, I'll cover non-probability sampling only. So, any sampling method where some elements of the population have no chance of selection. That means they are sometimes referred to as out of coverage, or where the probability of selection can't be accurately determined. So, here it determines the selection of elements based on population of interest. Let's say we visit every household in a given street and interview the first person to answer the door, right? So in any household with more than one occupant, this is a non-probability sample because some people are more likely to answer the door. For example, let's say, an unemployed person who spends most of their time at home is more likely to answer than an employed housemate who might be at the work when the interviewer calls, and it is not practical to calculate all these possibilities. So this is again one example of non-probability sampling. um, Yes, these are the types of sampling. The first type of the sampling is convenience sampling, which is known as haphazard opportunity. Convenience is, let's say, the people are sitting, and if I'll make a form, right? Okay, I'll say I'm doing a research on memorable tourism experiences. Please fill up this form. So this is the convenience sampling. You are convenient. You are sitting just, virtually next to me, right? So we are interacting. So that is our convenience sampling. Again, it's a type of non-probability sampling technique. And convenience sampling is when we can't access to large population, we go for convenience sampling because the data is readily available, right? And let's say, suppose you want to conduct a survey at a shopping center early in the morning. So whosoever comes, you ask him to respond to your questions, and then again, this type of the sampling is more useful for the pilot testing, although I have taken another earlier one session on pilot testing and pre-testing. So it is a short study where um, we take a sample and we just check the questionnaire, right? So convenience sampling is appropriate when the impact of selection is not very serious. Let's say selecting households for the collection of donation survey, right? So people doing research from the same industry, let's say most of you, if you belong to the education, you would go, okay, fine. I would like to do a research on teachers. I would like to do a research on professors. If somebody is working in the FMCG, fine. I have access to data. The scholars, when they come to us, the first thing is they say, "Yeah, fine. I belong to this industry. I want to do research because I'm familiar with the bottlenecks of this industry. I want to do research on this industry." That's it, right? It's very simply straightforward. I am aware what are the problems, and moreover, I have access to the data. Data collection will not be a problem, which is again, but again, it's not always important. industry is not important, because first thing is identification of problem, whether the problem exists in that industry or not, which you can solve with your research. That is more important, right? So to reduce the bias arising of the convenience sampling, first of all, in the methodology section, it is very important. Again, in your I've shared a number of research papers. I've just showed you how important this sampling section is. There's one full section on the sampling in a research paper. So you can use the combination, because most of the papers which I've showed you, they've used a combination of other sampling techniques also, right? So this is a convenience sampling, right? Now, judgmental sampling. Judgmental sampling is if I think that yes, he is the person who is able to answer my questions. I judge, because let's say I want to do a research on the telehealth or telemedicine. I go to a doctor, right? I assume, okay, fine, you must be giving consultations through you must be giving the teleconsultation. So that could be my judgmental sampling, because I judge from the qualification, yes, he is the right person to answer my questions, right? So, for example, for generating the ideas on the service quality of AI tools, researchers will have to reach out to the people who are using AI tools. Maybe most of you, you're not using the chatbots, or you're using the gamification in, let's say, in your day-to-day routine, or are you using the recommender systems? And are you using the virtual try-on technology nowadays? It's very common. So again, if I'll just ask a filter question: do you use virtual try-on technology for purchasing a product online? If you say yes, yes, then obviously I'll feel ki fine. Yes, this person is using. Let me go to the person and take the interview, or give my questionnaire to that particular person. So uh, judgmental sampling is appropriate when you have limited resources such as time, money, and access to the population. Sometimes this judgmental sampling, because this is this, you are judging yourself, right? You are judging yourself. Okay, fine. So they introduce the bias, right? And limit the generalizability of the results, because again, you are approaching the people whom you think they are better, they are appropriate, but there might be other people who have got more experience and knowledge as compared to the people whom you are associated with, right? Falling could be the criteria. Students whose contact number the teacher has. This is my perception.
Urvashi,
Yeah,
ma'am.
he is the one person who can give good feedback. Students who come regularly to the class.
Excuse me,
Okay.
ma'am.
Yes.
Ma'am, your presentation is not
Yes.
visible now, ma'am. I think there is some network disturbance because your voice also breaking.
Yes.
You're
Okay.
audible
I'm
now, ma'am.
audible now. Yeah. So in probability
Can you
sampling,
share
every student will
the
have a chance.
presentation,
But
ma'am?
again, if we are going to do, yes, I'm sure. Sharing is not there. Okay. Must be some disturbance. Just a moment. Yes. Is it
Yes, ma'am.
visible?
Fine. Yes, ma'am. Fine, ma'am.
Yes. So this is, I think, the last slide, because after that I have a class. I think this is the last slide which I take today. But the rest of the simple random sampling and all that, that I'll take tomorrow, and how to calculate the sample size, right? So quota sampling is, I think, did you go through this one? Judgmental sampling is clear, or shall I repeat? Yes, judgmental sampling is clear.
Yes, ma'am.
Shall I go to the quota sampling now? Yes. So quota sampling, as the name indicates, subgroup quota, right? So it is just as it is in the stratified sampling, but only thing is that what you do is you divide the population into small quotas, and then uh, or into specific groups. Then you give each interviewer or a person an assignment which states the number of cases in each quota from which they may collect the data. Let's say you selected interview maybe to sample 200 females and 300 males between the age group of 45 to 60. The example is written here. So here it is the second step which makes one of the non-probability, which makes it into the non-probability sampling. Because again, first of all, you divide the population into certain subgroups or groups, and then you pick up just conveniently from those, right? You pick up from those as per your convenience. So when you are picking up as per your convenience, this is the second step which is making it a quota sampling, right? Selection of the sample is non-random, right? So this is the problem, is these samples may be biased because not everyone gets a chance to be selected for the data. Let's, if we compare, see what we have done today is we did the learned about the population, we learned about the sampling frame, we learned about the non-probability sampling techniques, where we learned about the quota, purposive, snowball. Another sampling technique is a snowball sampling technique says, let's say when we take the referrals, right? When we take the referrals, let's say I have got a I'm the technical training workshop is there, and there are few other people who have also taken that technical training workshop. So in that case, so you approach me ki finally you have taken the technical training workshop, kindly refer um, I went to Gurgaon to collect the data personally from the online retailers. I went to their stores and then I asked them, okay, can you please refer your friend who is into the supply chain department of some other e-retailer from this way? Snowballing, say I collected the data. And those but here when we see the non-probability sampling, I was talking about the representativeness of the sample, which is comparatively less as compared to a random sampling. Tomorrow we will go for the random sampling as well as the how to calculate the sample size. But here the sample likelihood of the sample being representative is low, and non-probability sampling techniques are useful when you don't have a sampling frame first of all. Then again, sorry, you don't have a sampling frame, or you don't have that list with you, you have less time, you uh, again the cost, right? You need you have not that much amount to spend. You have to go to the different countries, areas and geographical locations to collect the data. And relative costs are again relatively content is high because you are controlling them. You are, as per your convenience, you are talking to the respondents as per your friends circles and all that, snowballing way you are contacting the respondents. The control is there. And again, in Indian scenarios, this non-probability sampling is only successful or better. But yes, probability sampling now is can also be taken care of, right? So both these samplings, depending upon the type of the objectives you have, play an important role in designing the sampling design. So here I stop today. Any questions from your side? Anything you want